How are
Well,
you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm feeling a bit dazed from a day of work, but good.
Well, I thought the film was great. I'm so glad we can include it in this year's Femme Filmmakers Festival. Um, so I guess we're good to start getting to the questions.
Yeah.
So I think to start, it'd be good to hear a bit about like your own journey into film and how you've kind of come to develop this like distinct style of filmmaking.
Oh, okay. Yes, my journey into film. I guess I started making films probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I'd always been very into film studies. I come from like a film theory background. I did film studies as part of my degree and kind of was kind of more going into that angle, but hadn't I'd always been writing, but I hadn't really tried directing before. And then or like I dabbled, but I hadn't really like committed.
Sure.
And yeah, like about 4 or 5 years ago, kind of around COVID, which I think, makes sense. I decided to teach myself how to make a film and started, yeah, very DIY. And this is my second film with a budget, third film from then.
Right.
Um, and yeah, in terms of my style, I don't know, like that's always a hard one to think too consciously about. Um, I yeah, I think it's like it's interesting watching it emerge and like when people share observations with you about your work, sometimes that crystallizes things that you might not be super aware of when you're making something, which I think is probably good because I think if I started to think too consciously about having a certain tone or, a certain style to my filmmaking, it would potentially ruin it.
Disrupt. Yeah, I can understand that.
So yeah, I think it's just kind of coming out naturally from what I'm interested in, what I find funny a lot of the time, or like yeah, I'd say a lot of it comes from like tensions or things that I find kind of amusing, and then questions that feel kind of complex and not always like clear cut.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'd say I don't know if that really answers
No, that's a great
or not.
answer. I'll say it's interesting you mentioned coming from film studies because I have as well, and I think I definitely kind of picked up on that kind of like grounding and intent for meaning in little ways. So it's cool kind of having that picked up on a
That's
bit.
really yeah,
Um,
yeah. Thank you.
and I guess a follow up from that, are there any kind of major inspirations you've had in terms of your own filmmaking, or has it been like mostly just from what you want to do?
No, I'm a big references person and like definitely find huge amounts of inspiration from looking at existing films. Yeah, I know there's filmmakers out there who don't do that and actually kind of take inspiration more from other things. But yeah, I'm definitely a processor and repeater of like cinematic traditions, I guess. Um, in terms of inspirations, for this specifically, I looked at a lot of like Nordic filmmakers. Um, Ruben Östlund has a scene in Triangle of Sadness, which is that opening scene with the couple, which I just think is great and a standalone scene and a really great example of like those kind of grey area arguments. So I looked at that and I'm trying to remember what else. I looked a lot at like different kind of couple argument scenes. Um, my broader inspirations is I kind of got into film being very interested in like John Cassavetes and quite sort of independent spirit filmmakers who quite rough and ready, that like those long zooms and like, docu style type things, but also incredible performances. Like I think that's a big thing for me is these like larger than life performances. Um, but that, yeah, I'd say now it's kind of a mix of that's like where I came from with filmmaking. But as I kind of find out what I want to make, uh, I have kind of different inspirations as I go along.
Interesting. So it kind of like helps you develop the concept, but then you grow it out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sort of. I think generally a first idea comes not comes from me, from some experience in my life, an anecdote. This is kind of a mix of like two different anecdotes and then my own experiences. Um, but then yeah, I definitely will go to films and or be thinking about like, okay, how's this been done previously? You know, what what kind of tone do I want this to be in? And then like what kind of filmmakers um will I end up looking to in that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a short like this that's so kind of intimate and vulnerable, I feel like the tiniest gestures and gazes of the characters like inform so much of their character. So I was curious about your experience directing the cast into that and how much of that came from the script versus maybe conversations with them or that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, we have Sunny and Kira who are both just incredible and I was so excited to be working with them. Yeah, we didn't have loads of rehearsal for this. We had a chemistry read, which was basically just an excuse for me to like get them in a room together and see if we were going to get on. And then we had like half a day of rehearsal, but that day was mostly just blocking because there's all this stuff with the fly and like also some intimacy, nudity stuff. So we kind of just needed to figure that stuff out. But in terms of performance and characters' backstory and those little subtle moments and things like that, I think that mostly came on the day and also, from conversations we had probably in that chemistry read about what they felt the story to be about, what I felt it to be about, and kind of like what's going on behind, because it's the whole film is really about subtext. Like no one at any point is like saying what they actually think.
Yeah,
Um, we talked a lot about like, okay, what is that subtext and who is this couple and like I think, yeah, they both just brought like so much life to those characters and some really beautiful moments where, yeah, you're capturing these little looks or um Kira's got these incredible like big eyes. I don't know, her eyes are so huge and I love watching her like pupils track around the size of her eye. Like I feel like you can really see the movement of her eyes in a way that's like quite special. So
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I think the most striking element for me on first viewing was the direction of the gazes and the eye contact, and they
Yeah.
really make it seem so natural. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. We did kind of talk about like okay, there's another story here that's not being said that obviously is said m more through the physical life. Um, so I think they had that in mind as well. Yeah.
Right. So, getting into the film itself, I'd love to talk about The Fly, who I think is the star of the film, because it's such a great way to represent these characters just completely struggling to be on the same page. And I'd love to hear more about how you came up with that concept in the writing process.
Yeah. Well, this short came out of wanting to do a dialogue, like one scene conversation that was an argument basically, or like a heightened discussion that is interrupted. Just because there's, I don't know, I think I'd I'd maybe found a few examples of that and been like, that's such an incredible dramatic device. One that I'd seen recently before writing this was in Boogie Nights when which is so different to this film, but at the end when they're in the drug dealer's house and there's that guy letting off firecrackers like throughout the
Yeah,
conversation. And I just loved it so much and I like love this idea of like some external thing creating pressure. to an already like tense situation, and punctuating it. And then in terms of like the idea for this, it kind of actually came from like an anecdote from my mum about when early on when she'd met my dad, they were in a room together and he got really preoccupied by killing a fly. And it was like in the kind of honeymoon phase of their relationship. And she remembers being a bit like, oh, that's, quite intense. And seeing this other side to him, I suppose. So yeah, I kind of just had always found that funny. And that thing of people getting quite obsessed and just in a distracted way by something, and what does it mean when that happens? Because often it's actually just displacement of something else that's going on. So that's where the fly came from. Yeah.
I just want to add, were there any difficulties about actually shooting the fly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, it was complicated. I bought a box of flies um, on eBay from this guy called Sam in Halifax. Really nice guy. I think that's what he does, like for a living.
He's the
People
fly
buy
man.
it for, yeah. I think people buy it for fishing and I don't know reptiles and things like that. Um, I've learned an unnecessary amount about buying insects from this film, but yeah, I bought a box of flies, and it's a little bit unpleasant, but basically, if you put them in the fridge, they slow down. So we had a fly that we would take one out of the box, put it in the fridge, and then use that one to shoot. But eventually they wake up, well, quite quickly they wake up and fly to the light source in the room, which when you're shooting a film is a big light
Yeah.
that you don't want on camera. So yeah, it was difficult. We did it at the end of the day, and I wanted to keep going. I could have keep shooting those flies for a really long time, but there's only so much high close up that you can do. And we released them all at the end, so there was no flies were harmed. The
Great
one that gets
news.
the one that gets squished was a dead fly. You can also buy it on the internet, like a dead preserved fly. So I stuck that one on the wall.
Perfect. I love that you're talking about like you're kind of writing these things in because you find them funny. Because I feel there is this definite comedic undertone running through. I mean, talking about that fly, there's such a sudden like squelch of that slap, which is this like point of finality that put a smile on my face. And also my personal favorite is the hard cut to the full body right after they say naked. So I was wondering, like, do you feel humor is an important element in your kind of filmmaking process or writing process?
Yeah, definitely. I've found that basically if I'm not finding something amusing on some level, if I don't think that there's like something funny about what I'm writing, to me, it doesn't need to be like comedy, laugh out loud funny, but something that like is amusing to me, I just get quite bored and I don't want to write it anymore. And I think I want to have a good time writing and making something, and often it helps if you're kind of amused by the thing. Um, and I think often the things that we find amusing are actually also quite like things that we find emotionally compelling as well. And there's definitely a link there. But yeah, this it's really funny with this film because some people find it really funny. Some people are like, this is very upsetting. Um, I think there's a real spectrum of like experience and reception, which is quite fun to see and like have people's different reactions to it. But yeah, for me, like I find it funny, and I spent a lot of time on set giggling because it was amusing.
Yeah, for me, I definitely felt it hit that like very nice balance of respecting the conflict and taking it seriously while also working in those comedy elements to make it kind of more, I suppose, accessible in a way.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
now
and
that,
and
oh sorry, go
like
on.
arguments. Oh, sorry. I mean,
No, you go.
I do think that. yeah, I always want it to be truthful. I don't really want to make a film that's just for laughs. And I don't think this is that. This is more probably on the drama side of things. Like it's serious and they're having like quite an important conversation for their relationship. But I just think in life, generally, sometimes those dramatic moments are actually like seen from another perspective, amusing. So
For sure. I mean, it's that thing where you remember something that was dramatic a while ago and it seems silly now, doesn't it? It's,
yeah, yeah,
it's similar. So another aspect of the film that I was really impressed by was the use of music. Because right from the get-go, you hear these sinister notes, and then they start to synergize with the buzzing of the fly. So I'd love to hear how that aspect was developed, like through the process and at what point it was kind of included.
yeah. The music and the sound mix were really important on this film, and I had two great collaborators. So the music's this guy called Hani, and the sound was Tom Bruins, and yeah, it just elevated it so much. I knew that a lot of the fly was going to be sound design, and that we weren't really going to see the fly um, until the end properly, or just glimpses. Um, and yeah, then the music kind of, I wanted the music to establish tone at the beginning and have this kind of like threat. Because obviously you're hearing people have sex and that could mean lots of different things, but I wanted it to be like this is almost like a threatening situation. And then obviously we used music a bit to kind of underscore the movement of the fly and the the disruption into the conversation. So having these slightly like jarring little bits of strings or whatever to kind of burst that bubble as the fly does. Um, and then yeah, the music at the end for me was sort of similarly like that slightly like you'd look back on it and it would be ridiculous feeling of like they've both ended up kind of in the same situation back in bed. Neither of them has said like what they actually feel to the other. And it's all just a bit silly. And I don't know, this like classical piano sonata just felt like the right vibe for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. No, that definitely left an impression. So one really refreshing element of the film was the way it focused on sex without sexualizing the characters. And I was wondering if that was an important element for you to highlight in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not something I like uh thought about loads. I guess it I did I guess I wanted it to be about sex, but it's not sexy. Like there's not, because it's actually really about sexual insecurity and much more about yeah, much more about like intimacy than it is about sex. And I think yeah, having both the character having it feel very real. These two characters who are quite intimate with each other, and not that sort of like heightened sex scene vibe, like a more natural and mundane like sex scene. Uh, and then yeah, the sort of like the salacious or more like sexy, sexualized themes are like more what they're discussing or what like she's thinking about. But it's actually in contrast to the quite like banal situation they're in. And yeah, and I feel like it was important for the characters that it's not that um that it's about that insecurity rather than about sex itself.
For sure. And touching on that point of like the mundane as well, I love the way the sound design really emphasized like the little shuffles in the bed and the steps. Just really kind of like it felt like it was a conversation that's happening just in a room, rather than this big, larger than life scene.
Yeah, well, that's Tom, and he's incredible. And we had a lot of fun adding like silly little floorboard creaks. It's funny that you mentioned the the fly splat because the sound design that's on that fly splat is so ridiculous. It's just really quiet. But like if you heard that sound at normal volume, it's like this like squelch. So yeah, we had a lot of fun with that sound design.
For sure. So it feels like to me this is the kind of film that feels both like intensely personal and like universally relatable to that kind of that feeling of having a difficult conversation and not feeling comfortable there. So I was wondering if that was a balance you kind of intentionally kept in mind as you were writing, or if it's something that just happens subconsciously.
I think I try not to have too much in mind when I'm writing, just because it's that thing of like preempting the thing before you've done it. But I definitely this theme felt relevant to the world right now, and like I think a lot of people um, of my generation are having these kind of conversations, and it's that like brink phase of like people in relationships, and you're kind of thinking like, how serious is this? Am I ready to commit? And also actually, it's about like probably yeah, your early 20s, that thing of not really knowing what you want and kind of seeking answers to what you want in other people, and like hoping that other people will like um almost like make decisions for you or make decisions easier for you, which is very universal. And yeah, obviously there's a lot of like content themes that feel relevant to me and people that I know, but also yeah, there's I guess there's more like universal experiences in there of that feeling of like seeking seeking answers and not really knowing what you want.
Gotcha. So stepping back from the film for a moment, I'd be interested to hear what kind of challenges you've faced as a woman entering the industry,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
if you feel there have been.
I it's hard to know whether a challenge is to do with you or to do with your gender. But I definitely feel like maybe I would have come to directing sooner if that had felt m more like a um something like that I saw other women doing. Obviously, there are great women directors, but yeah, I think there's it probably took me a bit longer to get to get past a certain amount of imposter syndrome and like sense of um not fitting in to be able to start trying to direct. Um, I think generally like I've found a really nice community of collaborators who where it's not I've not had like bad experiences. I haven't felt yeah, like personally there to be too many challenges directly to, in my experience, but obviously there's challenges out there in the world. You can look at, most programming or I don't know, I saw something on Instagram today that was like the new greats, and it was like the direct film directors, and it was just like a picture of like five men, and I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake. But yeah, so I think it's like it's more for me like a constant reminding myself that to not have imposter syndrome. But I think probably a lot of directors feel like that.
Yeah, of course. So, last question, because we are on the last few minutes here, but what can we expect from you next? Are there any upcoming projects or anything you'd like to talk about?
Yeah. I'm actually about to picture lock on a short that is another 5 minute scene between a couple having an argument, but it's a bit more silly. The themes are a bit less heavy. It's about a drastic haircut. Um, so yeah, it's a bit less drama leaning, probably a bit more comedy leaning. It's called Micro Bangs. So that should be. around soon. We'll see. But yeah, hoping to
Great.
finish that maybe in the next month.
Great. We'll keep an eye out.
Nice.
Oh, thank you for your time. It's been a great interview. You've answered these questions super well,
Thank you.
and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.